I can, and I can remember feeling, I still didn't realise the enormity of it really. I just thought, oh, it's just a little problem, you know, I'll have laparoscopy, open up the tubes and I'll be fine. But obviously, as time goes on, you realise that it's not necessarily going to be as straightforward. So then that's when I started probably feeling quite emotional about it and concerned and frightened, everything. But at the beginning, I really thought it still was a small problem. I'd never known anyone with infertility problems. You know, I had no history of it in my family, no symptoms, so I thought it was a pretty straightforward thing and we'd get over it, but we didn't, and it took about 8 years for us to have our family. Well, it was a stroke of luck in a bad situation, I guess. We lived in a small block of flats and we all knew each other. And one of the occupants of the other flats actually was a nurse in a big business, you know, looking after their employees. And she happened to work with someone who was on the committee of CHILD, which was the National Infertility Support Group, and brought me home one of their newsletters. And they were very much Middlesex based, where I lived at the time. They'd only been going, you know, a couple of years, so they were quite small, but at least they had a little newsletter and they had a local support group. And I'm not one of, you know, I'm not frightened to ask for information and to talk to people. I worked in the hotel industry. I was used to chatting away to anyone. So, you know, I got in touch with them and it went from there. As I say, they were very small at the time, purely voluntary, but at least I didn't feel on my own anymore, which is how I'd felt before. Well, my problem was blocked fallopian tubes caused by adhesions from a appendicitis and you know, appendectomy when I was 11, and so they blocked the tubes completely. So I had 3 attempts at unblocking the tubes through tubal surgery, which didn't work. I never got pregnant, and at the final attempt to unblock the tubes, they realised they wouldn't be able to, so they removed the fallopian tubes because they were just too badly damaged, and also 1 ovary because I had a massive cyst, which I didn't realise. And obviously then my only chance of conceiving was through IVF. And we tried that 3 times, but this was before, this, as you said, was a long time ago, and so it's before egg collection by ultrasound. So they were doing egg collection by laparoscopy. They could never see the eggs because of all the adhesions. They could only see them on a scan, but not with the naked eye. So they only ever managed to get 1 egg, and I only ever had 1 embryo to be able to be transferred. And sadly, it never took, it never implanted. So after the 3rd attempt, my consultant at the time sat me down and said, "Claire, I think you had better think about calling it a day." And whilst I was very upset at that on the day, after a few days I realised that there was an element of relief, that I was off this sort of roller coaster of treatment and tablets and blood tests and so on. So, and I'm not sure how quickly I would have made that decision by myself. It helped to be told by the doctor. And so then we'd already looked into adoption. A few of the people that I'd met through CHILD, the support group, had adopted. And so I knew the process, I knew what to do. And we talked about it. And again, cutting another long story short, we applied. We were asked, you know, to come forward for interviews and vetting and so on. And we went through all that and we were finally approved to adopt. And then 6 months later, they contacted us to say they had these 2 children, brother and sister, and we met them, and again, another long story, took a year or more, but finally they came to live with us. So, you know, I always believe that in a way that we were meant to go through all that to be there when our children needed us and needed a home and so on. So it all worked out beautifully in the end, but you never forget those years of trying. And, you know, after some time you do start to think, is this ever going to work? Am I facing a childless future?